Busy day for the Toronto Raptors, one of the busiest news days in Raptors history. There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about it at 1:20 in the morning because that's how we vibe, I guess, in this community. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, and all that good stuff on your way in. There's a lot to talk about today. Obviously, the start of it, I mean, we could start in one of a few directions, right? The Raptors have an extension. There's a bid for a WNBA team. There's a surgery to talk about. And I guess we could talk about the surgery first because, this is the resident internet Scotty Barnes Central, super fan club. And look, I didn't touch on it in yesterday's live, but this Scotty fan club versus Brickmuse thing was kind of nuts. Like this thing that happened on Twitter. To those of you who are not aware, allegedly, no, apparently, definitely, there's a lot of people on Twitter that think Scottie Barnes is special needs. And it kind of blew up into this crazy thing because there's this channel with 72,000 followers on X/Twitter called Brickmuse that started selling t-shirts about this and then got shut down because apparently the dude got doxxed because he introduced this on his LinkedIn profile. Anyways, long story short, Scotty Barnes was aware of it. He tweeted out in support saying y'all the best. So that's kind of nuts, all of this happening. Trying to stay off of Twitter just for mental health sake, and I suggest anyone else do the same. Anyways, that's not the Scotty news that we're talking about right now. The Scotty news we're talking about is, of course, Scotty Barnes. He ended up having potentially a season-ending surgery on his finger. And, I'm for this. It's an important thing, right? To have the off season for him, to make sure that he's going to be right. This is a longer term vision. Everything has been about the longer term vision for the Toronto Raptors. And I've mentioned it before in previous lives that I don't really have a problem with the Raptors shutting Scotty down for the season. Obviously, with the surgery, it prolongs the runtime back. So if the Raptors do go on some sort of miraculous run right now where, they pull off 4-5 or, 8-10 and they find themselves back in the play-in situation, there's a really good chance that Scotty's still done for the season, that he may not be available until the play-in or maybe the first round of the playoffs if he comes back at all. And yeah, I'm not panicking over this at all. I think it's a bit of a nothing burger. And frankly, I'm kind of glad that if the doctors said that that's the best path to no complications and no re-injury, then I'm happy they went with it. The other news, of course, is Larry Tannenbaum's Kilmer Group has proposed to bid to bring the 14th WNBA team to Toronto. And Teresa, who just left the Toronto Raptors. We talked about it in yesterday's live. Towards the end of it, someone brought it up that, hey, Teresa's gone. It's a huge loss for the Raptors. She left on good terms. This is why she's left. And the fact that she has already left makes me believe that this is like a for sure thing that is happening now. And I, for one, am very happy because when I found out that the Rogers board had basically rejected the opportunity for a WNBA team in Toronto, I was outraged because this is an enormous opportunity to bring a sports team that will be supported. I promise you, if WNBA can be supported in any city in North America, it is going to be this city. It is supported in New York for the most part. There are certain markets that are just not going to get on board with women's sports. But now you can also kind of understand how the Caitlin Clark, Pete Maravich conversation is being framed by MLSE / the Raptors / you know what I mean? Because yesterday I made a bit of a point to criticize Matt Devlin and Alvin Williams for continuing to talk about Caitlin Clark while Ochai Agbaji had the dunk. And a lot of people reached out to me and said, hey, it's this really, really big thing for women. Yes, my point still stands, but now I kind of understand it a little bit more because, of course, this is happening on the heels of this announcement coming the next day. And expect to hear a lot of, positive stuff about this. Look, I just want to say this. The women's game is in a great place. the talent infusion that is coming into the WNBA over the next 2 draft cycles is ridiculous. It's insane. There's already a lot of WNBA players that are really, really fun to watch, even for dudes who swear women's hoops isn't, entertaining. It's getting a lot more entertaining, and the game is growing in the right direction. And there've been a lot of NBA athletes that are really loud proponents for this. Kobe Bryant was one of the loudest, so it's really good to see. And I think Toronto will embrace a WNBA team. It'll be cool. It happens in the summer. I think these games will be packed, especially if the team is good and competitive. Not to mention, you're going to get to see, Paige Beckers come into Toronto every single summer. You're going to get to see Caitlin Clark come into Toronto every summer. You're going to see, Asia Wilson and potentially Candace Parker. And you're going to see a lot of women come to Toronto, and it's going to be a really, really cool thing for growth of basketball in the city. Not to mention, you already have so many elite. Well, honestly, so many elite. There's one particularly elite girls prep program here, and Brian and I have talked about it on during our conversation. So this is all very, very positive, and I think that's a great thing. And of course, there's a picture of Teresa there, and best of luck to her. And she's already a trailblazer, in terms of women's equality in sports. And I can't think of someone better to run this than her. So that'd be great. Okay. In other news, Kelly Olynyk, 2 years, $26.5 million. That's basically the mid-level exception. Now, that's a pay raise. He's like 32. How the fuck? Like, I'm shocked. I'm a little bit shocked. Okay, I'm not really that shocked. Here's the thing. I've always heard, this is just something I've heard, is that Canadian teams have to overpay American athletes to come to Canada, right? That's why you overpaid DeMarre Carroll. There was supposed to be a bit of a loophole, whereas like international guys, they want to play in Toronto, but then you kind of overpaid Hedo Turkoglu. Okay. But why do we keep overpaying Canadians? We've overpaid every one of them. Every single one of them. Kem Birch, massive overpay. Chris Boucher, massive overpay. And now Kelly Olynyk, massive overpay. I want to say massive overpay, but I want to frame this in the context of what centers are actually worth in the NBA today. Because in a league where Mason Plumlee is making $5 million, I don't think Kelly Olynyk's worth $13 million. And I really like the guy. I really do. He is really one of my favorite players in the NBA. Here's a stat that kind of, points to just how cool he is as a player. He's basically like a 7-foot guard or a 6'11" guard. But he's still 32 years old, and he's still a backup at this stage. And you cannot be paying a combined, $33 million for 2 not top 20 centers. It's just kind of weird. Okay, take a look at the context, okay? So Steven Adams, that's a starting center. He's an elite, offensive rebounder. I think he's probably a better player than Kelly. He's definitely a better player than Kelly Olynyk when he's healthy. He makes $12 million. Naz Reid is a much better player than Kelly Olynyk and a much better player than Jakob Poeltl. He makes 13 to play in Minnesota, right? Wendell Carter Jr., he's a better player than both those guys too. And all these guys that I just mentioned are younger as well, okay? Jonas Valanciunas, again, he's a starting center, right? You really want to make a case that Jonas Valanciunas is a considerably worse player than Jakob Poeltl or Kelly Olynyk? Go ahead. Daniel Gafford, right? There's another one. Mitchell Robinson, Yusuf Nurkic, Nikola Vucevic. What are we talking about here? You're paying Jakob Poeltl now as much as Jared Allen and Miles Turner, and those guys are better. So this is the point, right? You got guys in your system that want to be here. Jakob wanted to be here. Granted, you might have faced some competition from the Spurs, but I don't think it was $20 million. And the point is, whether we're talking about Jakob Poeltl, whether we're talking about Kelly Olynyk, whether we're talking about Kem Birch, whether we're talking about Chris Boucher, my question is, who are you competing against? Now, I understand the concept of getting the Kelly Olynyk deal done now because he had a $23 million cap hold, and that would have really complicated your summer had you had to hold him as a unrestricted free agent on your cap sheet. I get it. So signing him to 12.9 or whatever it is right now, that's going to clear up some space for you to work with in the offseason. However, what the hell are we talking about? Do you really think some team out there was going to go and sign Kelly Olynyk to 3 years full mid-level? Because that's the competing offer we're talking about right now. He allegedly wanted to be here. This is his big lifelong dream come true. So my question is, why is it that the guys who don't want to be here get overpaid, but the guys who really, really wanted to be here and their whole life they've just wanted to play here, those guys get overpaid too? I just don't get it. You can say the cap is going up, the TV deal, this, that, and whatever. But I'm telling you, man, there are teams out there that have centers that are better than your guys. Right now, okay, honest to goodness, ask yourself the question. If you could trade Jakob Poeltl and Kelly Olynyk for Isaiah Hartenstein, would you trade them? Like both of them together? Because I can tell you right now, Isaiah Hartenstein makes less than both those guys. This is hard to compete because, again, you can't even think about the center position in the modern NBA like you do other positions. It's just not a position that gets paid. You got guys like Andre Drummond signing minimum contracts and then grabbing 27 rebounds. I'm just saying this is the least valuable position in the NBA, and now you have ballparked $33 million into that position, and you don't have a top 10 center to show for it. I understand if you do have a top 10 center, like a Karl Anthony Towns or, Rudy Gobert or someone of that sort, right? I can understand where you might, because the impact is so high. But honestly, we went through a list the other day of like teams that Jakob Poeltl would start for, and we couldn't find 5. And I don't think I could find 5 teams where Kelly Olynyk would start. So these are like $33 million, and you don't even have a top 15 center on your team. Okay, I understand they're both younger. Are either of these guys better right now than Al Horford? A healthy DeAndre Ayton? Like, we're just talking, like, we're just spitballing, right? I'm not diminishing what they're worth. They're both really, really gifted playmakers, as the graphic shows, right? 2 of the top 3, right? But they have limitations. They're very much role players. They're very much 5th option, 4th option type of guys. They're very limited offensively. In the case of Kelly, obviously a little bit more diverse offensively, but he's not like some, star player offensively. 3-point shot, going downhill a little bit. It's a very good chance that both those guys are going to be worse players next year. So I'm a little bit surprised. And honestly, I just want to, we'll go through the entire list of players on this team, and we'll just estimate what the fair value is for those players, because I don't think that the Raptors are really getting like fair value for some of these players. Now some other roster moves. Okay, so Marquis Nowell gets waived. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Look, I want to support the guy. Obviously, he's 5'6", making it to this point in the NBA. Grand ambitions, talking about how he wanted to be the greatest Raptor of all time, and he's going to be the greatest Raptor of all time. And I was kind of out on him when he said that. It's not that I don't respect confidence. Confidence is great. Have confidence. But as a 5'6" NBA player, I think there's like irrational confidence, and then there's just delusion. And to suggest that you're going to walk in and be, even a top 10 point guard in Raptor history is crazy to me. Like it just felt kind of nuts when I heard it, and I was just like, okay, like get ready to fail. And look, he didn't fail. He succeeded. He couldn't stay healthy, but I thought he was really competitive for the 905, and I think that might be a bit of a little bit of a cap on the level of basketball he can play at. I've watched him play quite a bit. Naturally went back and watched some of his college tape and stuff, and he's a pretty interesting athlete. In summer league, we saw it. There's like a lot of bursts, there's a lot of skill, but he's an older rookie. He is 5'6.5". There are some serious limitations to some of his finishing, not to mention defensively. Oh my God, so I think with DJ Carton, who's his age, by the way, they're both 23, just significantly better than him, at this stage, and bigger, right? Not more skilled, definitely not more skilled, not a better player, but just a better prospect overall than him. I think it kind of just spelled the end, and the Raptors decided to cut their losses. And, it's nothing really much. They didn't invest a draft pick or anything like that. It was just an undrafted guy. He didn't work out. I am going to make an estimate. Let me make a prediction. Marquis Nowell is going to be a really good player in some other league, like Europe, Asia, Israel, something. I think he'll have like a really interesting time as an athlete playing against slightly slower competition where some of his speed is going to come into, fruition. Like, again, not everyone is cut out for the NBA. There are certain guys who just have like certain height limitations, whatever. A lot of talent overseas, man. A lot of talent. I tell you, I know some players who play overseas. I'll definitely have some of them on this show at some point for sure. In this coming year. And sorry, I'm having sort of congestion here. Every single time I watch them play, I see one guy who's probably better than at least 20 to 30 NBA players playing over there. So, the world is getting better. So obviously it's not a surefire thing to go overseas, but I think he'll do well overseas. In terms of Mo G, really interesting. I wonder if this is like it's just because they kind of have a similar game. And it was really interesting watching him play against San Antonio and just how disruptive he can be and long he is. Be interesting to see if he gets into the weight room, what he could do, but could he be a little bit of Chris Boucher, right? Try not to make comparisons between players who have similar physical attributes, but clearly the Raptors see something in him that is very Boucher-like. And, he is younger. He's very active, seems to have a really good motor, seen some promising touches in the 905 level. Obviously, I'm very, very happy that they, converted Javon Freeman Liberty. I think that was a good idea from he becomes I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Javon Freeman Liberty's contract is now guaranteed next year for like 1.7 or 1.8 million, and then he becomes a restricted free agent the year after. I would be interested to see him get some more run. I think at this stage, he is an NBA guard. I think like he may not be a good NBA player, but he's definitely like a top 400 player in the NBA for sure. And I think it'd be really interesting to see him just have a chance. I think defensively, I've seen some really interesting stuff from him. I think he's one of the 10 best players in the G League for whatever that's worth, and he's been the best player for the Raptors. Even when Gradey has played, he has, to me, felt like the best player for the Raptors 905. So it'd be very interesting. He's not that old, right? I've liked him since the day they signed him. Loved him in Summer League. I'm really looking forward to Javon Freeman Liberty. In terms of the other moves, Jamius Ramsey to a 10-day contract. Okay, look, don't know a ton about him. Looked up some tape on him, looked up his college stats. He was a pretty decent shooter in college. He has not really found that stroke at the NBA level. Granted, it's been very, very limited sample size. He's a 6'3" shooting guard. Could there be some defensive upside here, like a 3-and-D type of, stocky guard? Probably a good thing that the Oklahoma City Thunder were looking at him. Stan Presti tends to have a really good eye for development prospects, and obviously like the number of success stories that have come out of the OKC pipeline, it's getting quite ridiculous, right? In terms of how they keep finding these guys. So yeah, it's usually a good sign when OKC, Utah, San Antonio, etc. are looking at prospects or through their pipeline. And the Raptors seem to believe in that a lot. Obviously, they made a trade, Ochai Agbaji, the Jazz. They made a trade. Last year they made a signing, Joe Wieskamp from the Spurs, and then now they're making a signing from the OKC Thunder. So it is like I'm trying to understand like how Bobby and Masai think, and I think that might be one way that they think about it. So yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting too much. Obviously, the Raptors have plenty of room under the luxury tax. They can just keep swinging at 10-day, 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 10-day until they find a guy who fits. And, maybe you do find a guy who fits because there's a lot of talent in the NBA right now. And there's a lot of guys who are on long-term contracts that probably wouldn't get another contract if they were to become free agents today. And so there's like I just think that I've never seen so much talent between 350 and 550 is what I'm saying. I've never seen so much talent in my life at 350 to 550. And 350 to 550 is full of G League players, overseas players, etc. You need better role players. You simply do. And you need to find these guys who can fit into Darko's system. And the sooner you get them in, the sooner you get them implemented, the better. Anyways, we do have time for one call. This isn't going to be a super long live, but let's bring on Lane. Lane, what's going on, man?
Yo, what's up?
What's going on?
Not much. My phone was busy today. I felt like every time I looked down, Raptors did something else.
Yep.
Woj, Shams, everybody. It was great. I never see our name in the news cycle that much, unless it's for something bad or someone's getting hurt. So it was great to see the moves they're making. It made me think a little bit like how many guys on the roster now are realistically going to be on the roster next year, and I couldn't help to think not more than 7 are guaranteed. Yes.
Okay. Who are the 7?
Obviously Scotty, IQ,
Mm-hmm.
RJ, Yok.
You think Jakob is guaranteed?
I think
I
that
don't.
okay. Well, put him on the border. Obviously Kelly, because you just extended him today. I mean, unless he's going to be trade bait in the offseason, which would I don't know. I feel like that's rough. Gradey, obviously, and then Ochai.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree with what you say about Jakob. I think he's more on the bubble, but like if you would ask me, Gary Trent or Jakob, obviously Yak. I mean, but everyone else is kind of like I feel like is going to be gone.
I think Jakob is on the bubble largely because I'm not sure he wants to be here necessarily. It feels like a bit of a clunky fit. I think in terms of how they've approached the Dennis situation, right? Of like, hey, he was here on this other timeline, and now we moved to this other timeline, and it's like, okay, interesting. Well, what timeline was Jakob on?
Right.
It feels to me like he was on the Fred Pascal OG timeline, and right now it's like his defense has been very commendable over the last month. It's been really good. It's trending in the right direction. Offensively, he's obviously efficient, but very limited. Like there's a lot of limitations to his offensive game. Chief among them is he cannot hit a shot outside of 10 feet. And so I think that with guys like Scotty and, RJ, who sometimes struggle with their jumper, granted, they both made massive improvements this year. I think it really, really would screw the Raptors long term to just relegate themselves to, okay, this is our definite center of the future. Like you should look
Right.
for upgrades.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I agree. The only thing that makes me confident he'll be on the roster next year is it seems like every time Bobby and Messiah question about him, it's like, oh, we feel like he's a championship level center. He's part of the core kind of thing. But I mean, they've walked back on their word before. So
Yeah, need I remind you, Masai Ujiri, we think Delano Banton and Jeff Doughton are a really huge part of the future. Yeah, okay. I see that.
from from what I
Yeah,
heard though, they wanted Delano back, but Delano didn't want to come back.
for real?
Yeah, there was rumors on Twitter, like even I don't even like listen to the Raptors, the lives like not the lives, but the spaces like that. But I do see them sometimes, like the people that are in them. And like Zazu was saying that um he didn't want to come back, and it's not because of organization, it's just personal life in the city. Which from what people were saying from that, it sounds like his like boys were like, hey, you made it now, like where's our cut kind of thing. And he just wanted out.
Shit. Yeah, I get that. I feel that. That's the pressure of playing at home. If you're not grounded, it's not to say he's not grounded. I'm just saying, like,
Right.
there's a lot of pressures of playing home, and I've talked about that with Derrick Rose and Chicago, etc. So it's tough for sure. Um, so yeah, if that's the case, then I'm happy for him. But he had a huge, huge game for the Blazers the other day,
Yeah, he's doing
and
good.
yeah, it's hard for me to think to myself, as much as I did have issues with him, that he did not have more potential than
Malachi Flynn.
Malachi Flynn, Marquis Nowell,
Yeah.
literally anyone you replaced him with, right?
Yeah.
Um,
The guard situation now, though, is in a much better spot than it was 6, 7 months ago. I mean, if your third and fourth string at this point is Javon Freeman, Liberty, and DJ Carton, That's not bad at all.
Okay. Who's the Raptors' backup point guard right now?
Was Scotty hurt?
With, I mean, okay,
Or was Scotty
Scotty's
healthy?
your technically your starting power forward. I'm
Right.
saying like on the strictest sense, like even if Scotty is handling the ball a lot, he's not guarding point guards. So who is your backup point guard going into next season? If you assume that Emmanuel Quickly is your starting point guard, then who is your backup point guard? Because I'm looking at the Raptors depth chart right now, and
Yeah, I
guess
don't
what?
think he's on
There's
the
not a single point guard on this team other than apparently
Emmanuel Quick.
Emmanuel Quickly, and Emmanuel Quickly is not a point guard.
Yeah,
That's the funny thing.
I don't think he's on the roster right now, to be honest with you.
There you go. So how can the guard position be in a better place?
Well, depth wise, like if
Well,
okay,
you don't if
I
you
was
don't have a point guard on the roster, then how can you be doing well in the depth?
right, but I mean, I guess it's like Dennis Schroeder
Okay,
and
he's gone.
Malachi Flynn and Marquis Nowell.
Malachi's not doing too bad. I mean, he's had some positive moments in New York and shit. So I mean,
Yeah,
granted, they did ship him off.
Yeah.
I'm saying like is DJ Carton better than Jeff Doughton? No, I don't think
No,
so.
not right now.
So
I like his instincts though. I really do like that kid's instincts.
yeah, so do I. I don't know. I'm okay. So back to your point of you see 6 or 7 guys or whatever that are going to be on this team next year. Okay, I think RJ is going to be on this team next year because I think he's shown a lot of positive growth. I don't think Bruce Brown's going to be on this team next year.
No.
It seems like he's very sulky. I don't think Gary's going to be on this team next year. I'm very on the borderline about Jakob Poeltl. Kelly Olynyk will be on this team next year. Chris Boucher will not be on this team next year. I think they're going to trade him the second this offseason starts. Scotty, Gradey, yeah. Jalen McDaniels, God, I hope not. Emmanuel Quickly and Ochai Agbaji, yeah, I agree with that. I wonder if Jordan Nwora will be extended, something like of a proven contract. And same thing with Javon Freeman Liberty. I think Javon Freeman Liberty is a part of it. I'm curious to see if Garrett Temple makes his way back. If he wants to be here, I think they'll want him back. He's been a really good vet for them. I could see one of DJ Carton, or Javon Freeman Liberty, or Mohamed Gay, or one of those guys. Like they can come back too, maybe on a camp deal, maybe on one of those things. Right. So basically, there are some openings for the Raptors to use this cap space that they could free up. There's options. We can go in 2 different directions. There will be draft picks coming in, at least 2 that we know of. I'm curious, yeah, because look, I think the Raptors have if I can make 2 tweaks to the Raptors roster right now, number 1 would be to add a player that is slightly worse than Scotty, but better than Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett to the team. That's not an easy player to find because you're basically defining like a top 50 player. That's one thing. The second thing I would do is I would drastically upgrade the bottom of this roster in terms of overall potential. What I mean by that is when you look at guys like Dariq Whitehead for Brooklyn, that's their DJ Carton. Day'Ron Sharpe is their Mohamed Gay. The difference is the level of prospect that you're pushing those G League minutes into, and those it's just better. It's the higher level of prospect. So it feels like the Raptors have been trying to farm for undrafted gems and stuff like that. Like with Justin Champagnie and Ron Harper Jr. Granted, nothing wrong with those guys. It's you see the potential, whatever. But when a guy's 6'7" and he can just reasonably move around the court, you're like, okay, he has potential. But there's obviously a different level with Dariq Whitehead and Day'Ron Sharpe. When I look at the Brooklyn Nets, for instance, or when you look at, even the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? Or even the Miami Heat. There are certain teams where their fringe get 2-3 minutes every time there's a blowout guys are just better.
Yeah.
And it tends to be that competitive teams that have championship rosters, they don't usually have a lot of talent in roster spots 13 to 17. But some of these younger teams that are on the come up, they do. And I think the Raptors need to adjust from contender to young team on the come up, because this is where I think the Raptors really started out, because Fred VanVleet was one of those guys.
Mhm.
Norman Powell was one of those guys, right? Chris Boucher was one of those guys. Like, those guys all turned out to be really good players,
Yep.
right? So I'm just saying, like, who am I to say right now that Mohamedou Gay can't be him, and can't be Chris Boucher, and DJ Carton can't be Fred VanVleet? I don't know. That's the benefit of hindsight. I don't know what these guys are going to be, but I doubt it. I
Yeah.
doubt it, right? And if we can find that level of prospect at 15, 16 with the Indiana pick, and then 30, 31, 32 with that Detroit pick, that will be a very exciting thing for the Raptors, I think, to have G League level prospects. Because again, I mentioned this just to remember. Apparently, there was a point where Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam were your G League guys,
Mhm.
right? We need to get to a point where our G League guys are like legit NBA players
Yep.
instead of NBA hopefuls, might make it one day kind of guys.
Yep. Yep. And something that you said really caught my attention about how there's the up and coming rosters, or the kind of fringe playoff, mid playoff rosters. They're guys that only go out and blowouts for like 3 minutes or so, or quality at the end of their bench. That's just the product though of having late first round picks, I would think, in my opinion. And that we're fans of a team that the past few years have traded out of the late first round time and time and time again. Right. And so maybe that's what we're seeing. The lack of back end talent on the roster is because we've traded out of a first round pick that would have been Malachi Branham. We traded out of a first round pick. Oh, shoot. Whoa. Was there another one that we traded out of?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there probably is. I'm just not remembering right now. It's almost 2 a.m. here, so it's probably why. But I mean, yeah, I mean,
It's
you look,
2 a.m.
Malachi.
here too, dude.
That's right. You are in Toronto.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. Life's wild, man. Small world. Really, really small world. But yeah, I mean, you just traded it out of so many like potential talented picks. Like Malachi Branham right now, he's pretty much the sixth man for the Spurs. Granted, a team that's only winning 13 games right now, 14 games, I think.
Right.
But I mean, it's something, I mean, Malachi Branham or DJ Carton, you tell me. Which one are you?
No, I get it, and that's the thing. Like, Aaron Nesmith was a guy for the Boston Celtics,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, who was barely a fringe guy, right?
Yeah.
And look at him now, right? So you need like that level of talent to actually work out. And again, lottery talent is different, right?
Mhm.
Like, you could say, yeah, every year there's going to be lottery players who just don't pan out. They don't care about the game enough. James Wiseman's, Marvin Bagley's, Killian Hayes, whatever. Not all lottery talents are created equal, but like at some point you do need to start investing in real blue chip prospects. And I think Gradey's a blue chip prospect. It was obvious from the get-go that, his talent, acumen, vision for the game was just on a completely different level than a guy like Joe Wieskamp.
Mhm.
Both good shooters, both white guys, both long arms, completely different types of players. And that's where I'm talking about. Like, you need to start investing in that. And make some smart decisions that, because a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe, now I'm not saying necessarily Oscar Tshiebwe is the guy, but he's
Right.
had some really positive moments.
Right.
And it's making me think right now, Oscar Tshiebwe or Mohamedou Gay.
Yeah, I know who I'm taking.
I do too. Wait, who?
Oh, Oscar Tshiebwe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's just such an interesting player type because you don't have that player on your team. And so often I see this team struggling to grab a rebound or finding a big who can set a screen or grab an offensive rebound. And I'm just like, bro, the guy was sitting right there.
Right.
And, you're going to have guys like this, that are going to be typically bigs, right? Like a Zach Edey, who's going to be sitting probably in the second round. You're going to have a guy like Drew Timme, guy like that, probably just floating around the G League for a while, if not. And I mean, these guys are going to be available. They're going to be available.
Trace Jackson Davis. He was like one of the last picks in the draft last year.
I feel it's a little bit disingenuous because he kind of tanked his own value. He would have been taken much earlier in the second round. Nevertheless, he would have been a second round pick regardless.
True that. True that. But it's like I feel like for so many years now, the Raptors as an organization, especially the front office, has gone off of potential, 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 instead of like, okay, maybe this guy's not so good at this, but he's also really good at this, and we could use this to fill a hole. Instead, they're trying to get, well, not on the top end of the roster players, but bottom end of the roster players. They're trying to get guys that can do a little bit of everything instead of some guys that specialize in a few things.
Well, I mean, they went with Armani Brooks. I think he fits the mold of what you're talking about right now. And they also went with Joe Wieskamp. He kind of fits the mold of a
That's true.
specialist shooter who could potentially defend. I don't know. Some guys just don't work out. And it's like, it's so weird because, like, you look at them and you're like, man, a guy who shoots 44% from three, 46% from three, the way Joe did. Or even you look at a guy like Ron Harper, right? Where you're like, holy shit, you know, you got a 7-foot wingspan. He's got pretty interesting movement patterns. Or even a guy like Justin Champagny, you know? And it's like you could really easily sell yourself into any of these guys being very productive, you know, 11th, 12th guys on the roster, right? I think the difference here is you need your 13th or 14th guys to have the upside of like starters,
Mhm.
you know, and then try to get them there slowly. I'm curious, like if we could build a time machine, if Darko Rajakovic could work over the last 4 years with all the prospects that the Raptors brought in, would one of them have popped? And a lot of people use that sort of, you know, sad logic of like, well, they didn't pop somewhere else, as if that's the only way to think about this, right? I really do think it comes down to prospect and team fit, you know, coaching staff, you know, team philosophy, you know, team chemistry, all that stuff. And yeah, I think there is a team out there in which probably Joe Wieskamp or someone like that finds a really productive end of bench role,
Yeah.
you know, or yeah. So I'm curious to see what the Raptors are going to do. But I think two of those roster spots of the 8-ish available are going to go to draft picks. And I
Yeah.
think one of them is going to be mid-level, and then probably the rest are going to be trades.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. But like you just said, you hit the freaking nail. I mean, you've said it. Could you imagine if like, gosh, I don't know, the Lakers drafted Grady Dick and he would have performed like he did at the beginning of the season? He would have got shipped at the deadline.
You
They
think
would have
so?
moved him. Oh yeah. They have
Well,
no
they,
pay.
they didn't ship their draft pick, and he's played even worse.
Yeah, because he's been in the G League pretty much. They would have tried to ship Grady. They tried to move him. They tried to move him. To be fair, no one wanted him.
Fair enough. Grady would have retained some market value for sure. He was a much
Yeah.
higher, highly touted prospect, and that's the thing too. Like with lottery picks, is you know typically even a year after not working out, they retain some of the value from the guys who think, oh well, I remember him in college. I remember in high school. Grady built up quite a resume in high school and college. There's a lot of NBA GMs I think that are very very big fans of his game and what he can do. And I'm really curious to see what he's going to continue to do. Like next 20 games, you know, starting tomorrow night. I'm really watching right now for him and IQ, man. Him, IQ, and RJ, like to me, it's like that's the
Yeah.
most interesting part of this team, obviously. And what I'm trying to say right now is I wish there was more. I wish there was a Dariq Whitehead or a Dayron Sharp or a, you know, a young Aaron Neesmith or
We maybe have Ochai in that
Ochai
potentially.
as well. I mean, it's just yeah, with Ochai. See, I'm a really big fan of his. I understand he's a former lottery player and all that stuff. He did have 9 rebounds. It'll be very interesting to see what he does. He remind you of anybody? Kind of reminded me of like a really poor man's Tony Allen right now.
Yeah, you know who he reminded me of? He reminded me of Pistons Stanley Johnson a little bit. Just a tad bit. Um yeah, I don't know. I just wish he played offense like he played defense because I feel like on defense he's very smooth and methodical and very locked in, and then on offense sometimes it's very sporadic. I feel like that's the best way to explain it.
His dribble creation stuff in between passing, ball skills, these things are just lacking. They're just missing from his game. Um, which is, not great. Like,
Right.
it's not great. I was listening to his coach at Kansas talk about, him getting shipped to the same team as Gradey. And he made the most interesting comment, which I thought was really strange because they did win a national title together, right? So you would
Mhm.
think that he would be more pro Ochai. And he just said, I'm happy for him. Clearly wasn't working out in Utah. I hope he has a good chance. I just hope he doesn't cut into Grady's minutes. And I was just like, that's interesting.
Yeah, Bill Self is a very interesting character.
I
Very,
mean, he's very honest,
he
but
is.
also like you had Grady for 1 year, you had Ochai for 2. You won a championship with Ochai. Ochai was definitely the better college player. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know about definitely the better college player, but he was definitely the more decorated and accomplished college player
Mhm.
in terms of just what he did. For him to prioritize Grady Dick, the younger, you know, technically higher pick player, barely 13th, 14th, whatever, splitting hairs, and just to basically just bluntly say, I'm happy for Ochai, just hope he doesn't cut into Grady's minutes, kind of gets you into thinking like how he thinks about Grady going forward versus how he thinks about Ochai going forward. That's just my read on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would somewhat agree with that analysis because I think that Grady has potential at one point to be possibly a top 70 player in the NBA, and Ochai, you're probably hoping like top 180. You know,
Man, they better hope for better than that. But yeah, I could see that. Um,
just realistically. I mean, I obviously hope better too, but
Yeah, I think defensively, if he just locks in and just does one decent thing on offense, like apart from like he can do three decent things on offense. Like if he can just become a great cutter,
Mhm.
you know, a great corner shooter and a great offensive rebounder, and then on defense, he can just take the hardest assignment every night and float. He will carve himself a 20 minutes per game nightly rotation spot on this team. So here's the question. Do you think there will be a player taken in this next year's draft between picks 26 and 32 that will be better than Ochai Agbaji in the next 3 years?
in the next 3 years,
Yeah.
mm,
Like if you had to say, what are the chances of that happening?
okay, what are the chances better than Ochai? Probably 35 to 40%, I would say.
So you think it is 40% likely that there will be a player better than Ochai Agbaji, who is 23 years old right now, framing that
What's
into reference and will be going to his third year. No, just consider it. So what you're saying is there will be a player, 40% likely there will be a player who is better than third year through fifth year Ochai Agbaji in their first to third year, picked between 26 and 32 in this year's draft. That is not saying a lot about Ochai Agbaji. I'm just saying, like, the odds should be lower. They should be
they should
lower.
they should be, but the one thing that
I'm not
gets me,
disagreeing with you. I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
saying they should be lower.
No, I 100% agree. The one thing that gets me right now though about this year's draft is a lot of the guys at the end of the first round are going to get passed over, especially by American and North American media, just because like they're not from this continent. We're going to have a lot of late first round picks that are from places not from here, and you never know how those guys are going to pop. What's going to happen once they get to the NBA? And it's going to be more specialized players. Like you're going to see more 3-point specialists, hustle guys, defensive guys. Like this draft is so weird just looking at it. It's not the only draft I can compare this draft to is geez, probably 2013 draft potentially. Weirdly enough,
Wow.
yeah. Like late talent wise.
Okay, well, in fairness, right now the Indiana Pacers are 15th, right?
Mm.
You know who went 15th in 2013?
Oh gosh, you're gonna rattle my brain. How do I
Okay,
remember the late guys? I don't. Who is it? Who is it? I'm not gonna get it. We're gonna sit here for like 3 minutes. I'm not gonna get it.
you will get it. I'll give you hints. He's an NBA champion.
Uh huh.
He's not from here. He's a former league MVP.
Oh yes, Giannis.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
there we go.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
So yeah. So I mean, it was a weird draft for sure. Not
But
very strong at the top, but
even when
had some.
Giannis even when Giannis got here, like what was he known for? Hustle, 3-point shooting from the key, from the wing,
Yeah.
from the wing. My fault. From the wing. I mean, and look what he evolved into. So it's like you don't know, like when these European prospects or for guys from Africa or Russia, when they get here, like what the hell they're going to turn into eventually.
Here's the 23rd. Okay, so here's the draft. Okay, draft order. Victor. Okay, so starting out, Anthony Bennett, bust. Victor Oladipo, interesting career. Really high, really bad low. Otto Porter, role player. Cody Zeller, role player. Alex Len, bust. Nerlens Noel, role player. Ben McLemore, bust. Contavious Caldwell Pope, serviceable role player. Trey Burke, bust. CJ McCollum, surprise. Michael Carter Williams, bust. Steven Adams, Kelly Olynyk. Bet a lot of people don't realize that Kelly Olynyk was a lottery pick. Shabazz Muhammad, age controversy stuff, bust. Giannis Antetokounmpo, MVP. Bebe Nagara, Raptors legend. Lucas Bebe Nagara, bust. Dennis Schroeder, reasonable, serviceable veteran. Shane Larkin, bust. Sergei Karasev, bust. Tony Snell, serviceable role player. Jang, role player. Plumlee, role player. Tim Hardaway Jr., role player. Reggie Bullock, role player. Rudy Gobert, star, right? So, shit, if this draft is like that, then you will have a chance, absolutely, to get a role player here.
Right.
Look at the number of role players there were here.
I mean, even Andre Robertson, that's not a bad pick at 26.
Andre Roberson was a pretty decent role player. Granted, not anywhere near the level of some of the other guys that we're talking about, like George Udang or Mason Plumlee or whatever. And let's look at the second round. We had Alan Crabb. He had a bit of an NBA career. We had Mike Muscala. He's still in the NBA right now. You consider that a success given the average, shit. To me, it's like if you make it 6 years in the NBA, you are very much a success, right?
Yep.
I had high hopes for Glenn Rice Jr., probably because I liked his dad so much, but nothing there. The second round was really weak for this draft.
Yeah, but that into the first round, I'm telling you, it kind of reminds me of this draft. It really does. Maybe not the top so much.
I think this draft is deeper.
Yeah,
I would
agree
out there.
with that.
But you're talking about two of the best international players of all time in Rudy Gobert and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they were in this draft.
Right.
2014 was fucking weak. But that second round got like so talented. Do you know what I mean? Like that's why every single draft is different. Look at the second round of 2014. Joe Harris 33, Spencer Dinwiddie 38, Jeremy Grant 39, Glenn Robinson 40.
I see that.
Nikola Jokic 41. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. Dwight Powell 45, Jordan Clarkson 46.
That's crazy. There's a better player picked 10 picks after Jokic.
What do you mean?
There was a better player than Jokic picked 10 picks after.
Oh, shut up.
I didn't even know he got drafted.
That's crazy. You didn't know Thanasis got drafted.
No, I thought he's a free agent signing to make Giannis.
He just walked on. No, man. Alex and Thanasis were like actual NBA prospects that people actually expected real things from.
I knew Alex was, and I know the Raptors were trying to play around with him, play nice to try to get Giannis here back in 2019, 2020, and we struck out so.
Yeah, man. But it's so crazy because 2014 was such a terrible first round, but it might have been one of the greatest second rounds, if not the greatest second round of all time. And then you have the very next year, look at this second round. You got Rashawn Holmes, you got Josh Richardson, you got Pat Connaughton, you got Norman Powell, role player.
Jetty and Moz, Montrell.
There's talent everywhere. And it's just like, for me, the Raptors are always either not drafting or they're drafting just a little too late, right? So you might draft like 45th, 46th, but it's like how many players picked after Delano Banton and David Johnson actually worked out from that draft? It's not like the
Right.
Raptors are just fucking up completely. They're just picking wrong places, you know?
Right.
I think this year they're going to pick in the right place in this draft. You know, coming up, I could see a really talented player falling to 31, 32. I mean like a mid first round talent. And it's just like, I don't know, like maybe it's just years and years of playing 2K, but like I remember, you know, sometimes you would import these drafts, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes you would have this draft where there's like this miracle prospect at the top. You know, he's got like an 84 rating, and then the next guy's like an 82, and then there's like a 79, and then everything's like 72, 71, 72, 71, all the way down. And you just got to find which one has the most. But then there's these other drafts that there's just nobody even close to 80, but it's just like there's a whole bunch of 75s in there. And you're like, man, can I get myself a Morris Peterson in this draft? Can I get myself a Trey Murphy? Can I get myself, you know, a Herb Jones in this draft? Because it's just like, you know, too often like drafts are defined by the star power at the top. And I feel like this draft is really turning into
Yeah.
like a lot of meat and potatoes in the middle, you know, like substantial role
Mhm.
players. And again, Aaron Neesmith, that's a substantial role player. Miles Turner is a substantial role player. Jakob Poeltl, substantial role player. Kelly Olynyk, substantial role player. I think those players will be available in this draft.
Oh yeah. I mean, how good does that Pacers pick look now? How good does that pick look?
Looks great.
It looks
Yeah.
amazing. I think it's what 15 right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah, yeah.
we can get Giannis. Hopefully.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm pretty sure, like with the way scouting has gone, there's no way in hell a player like Giannis will ever fall to 15 again. I
no.
could be wrong, but a guy with his physical profile in this draft will go like second or third overall. I feel like the most a player like Giannis would drop, given how much concentration there is on global scouting today, is 7, which is Bilal Coulibaly last year.
Right.
I just think like potential like that just does not fall anymore. And I think like this will, like as drafting becomes more sophisticated, you know, again, they often say, I think like I've quoted this before, Daryl Morey said, you know, the best place to be in the NBA is when you're operating with 7 teams that don't know what they're doing, because everyone can just kind of farm off of those teams.
Mhm.
I just feel like there aren't 7 teams that don't know what they're doing anymore, you
Yeah.
know?
Analytics has completely pushed front offices in a different direction. You know, even the incompetent ones are now getting competent, or at least somewhat competent.
Yeah, so it's like you gotta find the next trend before analytics, and I'm curious to know what that's gonna be, and you know how that's gonna be, and I think it'll come down to like psychology and like testing of prospects and personality profiles and mapping out, you know, what makes people successful, because it's very easy to say, you know, this guy's true shooting percentage and this guy's on off percent, you know, numbers in college were this and that, but it's like those guys fail every single year. There are guys who just fail every single year, succeed every single year out of nowhere. So it's like being able to be on the forefront as a front office in terms of like personality testing and like performance testing. And I'm not quite talking like Brian Colangelo and, you know, Andrea Bargnani and the caliper test, but like a lot more sophisticated than that. Like being able to discern what inherent set of skills, qualities, red flags form the personality profile of a type of person who's going to be successful in the NBA. And I think this is like partially art, partially science, but like I'm starting to get like to a point where I'm starting to be able to tell more and more.
Mhm.
Like I can listen to a prospect talk for like an hour and come up with like a pretty good gauge on how well they see themselves. Obviously, there must be a way to make this way more scientific and less guessworky,
Mhm.
and less prone to like human bias and human error. But like, I feel like that should be a good place to take this, because
Yeah.
you've got the tracking data, you've got the performance testing, you've got all the basic, you know, numbers and charting of, you know, all their performance metrics, their measurements, etc. Okay, and then you got the analytics. Now how do you sounds kind of cheesy to say, how do you measure the heart of the man? You know,
Right.
how do you measure, I think, but I think it comes down to the brain. I think it comes down to like, how do you gauge how this person will respond to being benched?
Yeah.
You know, And it has to be much more complicated than asking them, how would you respond to being benched? And teams do this like very, I don't want to say inefficiently because there is no other way to do it right now. Like where they go and they dig up every single thing. They do rounds and rounds and rounds of interviews from your grade 6 teacher to your grade 7 teacher to your high school teacher to your parents to your grandparents to your neighbors, asking, is do you remember a time when they apologized for something? Do you like there was one particular story with Scotty Barnes where he like snapped at a coach or something, and then he apologized to that coach, and then they factored that in as like part of his personality profile. Like, he's someone who wears his heart on his sleeve, but he accepts his mistakes. And they're all like trying to data map because again, like the cost of getting one of these picks wrong, like the cost of going Patrick Williams instead of Scotty Barnes, like this is millions of dollars. There's so much on the line now to get one of these picks wrong.
Or Suggs instead of Barnes. Can you imagine
that? Exactly. So how did you know, talking to Jalen Suggs, the uber confident, very, very confident, somewhat pompous at times, Jalen Suggs, staring at you in the face, saying he's going to be your franchise savior, your point guard, you're losing Kyle Lowry. How do you take that player and just say, nah, we're going to go for the guy who mumbles through half his answers and says winning a lot? You know what I mean? Like it is difficult. This is why Masai and Bobby are paid the big bucks, but I feel like there must be a way to make this more scientific.
Yeah, everything you're talking about right now, you have Instagram, right?
Yep.
Okay, so there's a page on Instagram I follow called Jeff Sports. You might follow him too. Basketball page. Look him up. He's great. Does a lot of analytical stuff, and he's doing this new series called Why I Would Make a Terrible GM. Okay. And he has like 5 or 6 posts so far about it, but my favorite one was the Donovan Mitchell one. Okay. On how as a sophomore at Louisville coming out, he was shooting like 41% from the field, 32% from 3, was a 6'1" undersized guard, didn't have high wingspan, and yet he was drafted and traded on draft night. And he's like, if I was a fellow GM, I would have laughed at that pick. And now look at him. It's like you look at some of these guys, like he was super high on Michael Carter-Williams coming out. And he's like, it's just funny because it's a guy who has really good opinions, really humble guy, just says facts, and his opinions are very structured, gives reasons behind it. But it's cool that he's doing a series on like why I would be a terrible GM. And it's like picks that he thought would have been great, picks that he would have missed on. So I really do think that's
one player. Yeah, that's really interesting. One player that I was really, really high on that just did not work out, and I'm still holding out hope. Dante Exum. I don't know why, man. something about like honestly, it's just like you know what it is. It is when you get down to the nitty gritty of why we do this. It's 100% archetypes. Mm-hmm. Dante Exum is a 6'6" fluid guard who can play point guard. You know how easy it is, like to see him move on the basketball court and to become completely seduced by the idea that this is like some sort of cross between Penny Hardaway and Michael Jordan. Add to it, there's anchoring bias because there is this picture that floated around of him at the draft as a very young kid with Michael Jordan. So you immediately associating, it's like your brain got tricked. He's a 6'6" guy. He has very fluid movement patterns. He plays guard. He's going in the top 5. He's foreign. So there's already that era of mystique. Like, you don't know the competition he played against. So his game wasn't, dissected at Louisville or, Arkansas or whatever, where you watched him 27, 28 times, or in the G League where he went up against men. No, he's foreign. And so, it doesn't really bother you that his numbers aren't so great. And it's just like, there's a lot of players like that, where they're like, they look like this other guy and maybe that other guy was really good. And you can kind of see how this guy looks like that guy. And it's hard not to like blur the image. You know what I mean? Like you start looking at this guy and you start imagining the other guy. Like you see a guy like
Jalen Green.
Deshaun Stevenson is a great example. People thought that guy was going to be the next Michael Jordan. Eddie Jones, Kobe Bryant. Like there's a lot of guys that people said were going to be the next Michael Jordan. None of them became the next Michael Jordan. But there's certain things that they would do that you're just like, oh, MJ used to do that. Jerry Stackhouse, Michael Finley. Like I tell you, like there's so many guys. Like this is before your time. like this was in the 90s, early 2000s, where everybody's looking for the next Jordan. And we had Harold Miner, we had Deshaun Stevenson, we had Quintel Woods. Holy shit, JUCO legend Quintel Woods. Had Eddie Jones, Kobe Bryant, Grant Hill, Jerry Stackhouse, Michael Finley, Vince Carter. Holy shit. Like the number of guys who were compared to Michael Jordan coming out of the draft. DeMar DeRozan. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like DeMar DeRozan compared more to Vince Carter. But again,
Right.
and you see his Compton High and you see the measurements and you're like, yeah, I could see that. It's very much the reason I feel like most people are wrong, because what this does usually is it means you miss unicorns. You miss one of ones. Donovan Mitchell is a one of one if you think about it. There's very, very few guys, if any guys, in the league that have ever dominated at his physical profile the way that he's dominating. Nikola Jokic, unicorn. Luka Doncic, unicorn. Giannis Antetokounmpo, unicorn. All these guys are unicorns. In a really weird way, they're all like one of ones. There isn't another player quite like them. To the point where
the Timberwolves passed over him twice.
Steph Curry is another one.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's a total unicorn in terms of his play style. So it's like, and as the world gets bigger and we just continue to expand the population and whatever, there's the chances that somebody comes along. And, it's so interesting because one of my favorite channels, they had this like entire blast on Victor Wembanyama. He's going to be injury prone. Now, touch wood, I really hope Victor will not succumb to injuries. But the idea that every person who's been 7'3" plus has been injury prone, and therefore this guy who is 7'5" plus is going to be injury prone, and it's just like, yeah, but have you seen him move?
Right.
Does he remind you of any other player of that size? Because the very idea of being tall does not, by definition, make someone injury prone. It's actually being rigid and having this like very clunky movement pattern that makes you injury prone. There are a lot of guys like Zion Williamson's injury prone. Could have told you that the second he walked. Literally, the second I saw him walk at Duke, I'm like, this guy's going to be injury prone. His gait is fucked up. So, like, when you see a guy who's very fluid, Michael Jordan, Victor Wembanyama, like all these guys, they're so fluid in the way that they move. Their gait is like loose. Kobe was pretty loose, right? Steph is pretty loose. Like all of these guys are loose.
Scottie's loose. If Scottie was not loose, he would have succumbed to massive injuries by now. But because of how loose and athletic that guy is, his joints have been able to put up with a lot so far.
Interesting you say Scottie is loose, because I don't find him that loose.
I actually find his looseness higher than his athleticism. Maybe that's just my opinion and my read on him. I'm sure if we sat down and watched the game, maybe my opinion would change. Maybe your opinion would change a little bit just from talking. But when I watch him, I feel like he's super athletic. I'm not saying he's not athletic, but compared to a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, I think Kristaps is more athletic than him, but I think Kristaps is a lot more rigid than Scottie is. I think Scottie's a lot looser.
7'3". I think Scottie, like, if you compare Scottie's athleticism to Mikal Bridges, like a wing. Like, granted, Mikal's smaller, so maybe I need to compare him to like a 6'8" guy. LeBron. Those guys are just a little bit more fluid than him. Like, LeBron is very upright as well, right? But there's nothing hitchy about the way he moves. And there is something very clunky sometimes about the way Scottie moves. It's not quite Zion, but it's also not quite Durant.
Yeah,
there needs to be a smoothness. There needs to be like, what I mean to say is that certain players feel like they're having to fight through extra gears to move. And then there are certain players that are not fighting through anything to move. I think you could look at a guy like Dirk Nowitzki and say that's an example of a guy who kind of had like a kind of clunky way of moving around. You could say it's because he's unathletic, whatever. You could look at a guy like Paul Pierce and also maybe say that he didn't have the most like conventionally smooth way of moving around the court. Kobe was pretty smooth though. Michael was pretty smooth. Wemby is pretty smooth. Like, there's just Kevin Durant is very smooth. Like, there's nothing. I think it comes down to just flexibility. I think it comes down to flexibility, looseness, gait, patterns that you wire at a young age in terms of how you just move your feet and move around the earth. And I think like the less resistance there is to that, the more flexibility, the more dynamicism they can be to your handle. Sometimes when Scottie is moving, it's almost like there's a disconnect between his foot and his hand.
That could just
Whereas
be
when
growth.
Kobe moves, everything moves on a complete string.
Right. That could be growth too. I mean, like, when
It
did he
could be
hit his
growth.
when did he hit his last growth spurt? Could be the question, because he could be like a toddler walking in a giraffe's body.
He's just everything is very big with Scottie. His feet are huge. His hands are huge. His
They are.
longs are super arm.
But when he goes,
Sorry, his arms are super long. His legs are super long. He's just all limbs. He's
yeah,
no torso, all limbs. That's going to, by nature, make you a little less balanced.
yeah,
Because everything about you is imbalanced. There's
until
nothing normal about how Scottie Barnes is. Like literally everything about him is completely abnormal.
he finds his body, his adult. I mean, he's still a kid, right? Like, he probably won't grow until his body till he's like 25, 26, like fully grown and comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's another side to it too. Whereas obviously, like a guy like Zion, Scottie, and Derrick Rose, all three very, in my opinion, like very sort of like not super smooth movers. Also incredibly difficult to guard because of that. So as long as he can stay
True.
healthy, Shirt and Forbes saying it's called dynamic and compound movement in the gym and do compound exercises to target core muscles at the same time and dynamic movement, stretching, and Pilates or yoga. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Anyways, good chat as always.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for calling in. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. I'm interested to see what kind of a fight they put up against New Orleans tomorrow, because the last time we absolutely got our asses handed to us. So maybe there'll be some like pride behind it. I mean, it's going to be hard to win the game, but I would like to see it be within at least 10 points, the final score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a positive thing that can happen when a team is being slept on and the pressure is just off. I don't think anyone expects the Raptors to make the play in at all. But they can use that as motivation. I think you'll find out a lot about this team. And Gradey played really well against New Orleans last time, like really well. He blew up against New Orleans last time. I think part of this might just be because so many people have basically tweeted at him directly to him, basically saying like, "We wish pick Jordan Hawkins. Wish we pick Jordan Hawkins." So maybe he takes it a little bit personally that a lot of people have been comparing him, and maybe this could be, I don't know, I'm waiting for a 40 piece from Gradey. That's going to be like the day I think this Raptor fan base just like explodes, because if this guy can do that, then suddenly the dream of him and Scottie just becomes so much brighter. So
He's
I'm
so
looking
good, man.
forward to it too.
He's so good. I'm so happy that this community specifically did not give up on him, because there's so many other Raptors YouTubers I watch that his game 5, 6, 7 into the NBA, they were ready to discard a 19-year-old, which I just thought was absolutely insane, because you see it, I see it, the way he moves, the way he processes the game. It doesn't matter if he would have only shot 30% from three the rest of the year. I would have been willing to say that this is a key building block going forward, just because of how he sees the game. The shooting will come. He has always shot good at every level of basketball he's ever played at. It's not going to stop here. And bam.
I agree.
Here it is.
Here's something crazy. So in December, granted, only in 14 minutes. So here's his true shooting for every single month. Get ready, because your head's about to explode. Okay. 53% in October, 38% in November. That's the disaster month. Okay. November was the disaster month. Since then, he is 73.5% in December. Granted, only 14 minutes played, so not a huge sample size. But since then, 55.4% in January, 121 minutes, 69.4% in February, bro.
Yeah.
Bro is shooting like better than most centers in terms of efficiency.
Yeah.
It's crazy considering most of his entire shot diet is jumpers. And in March, so far in 2 games, 51 minutes, 64%. He has been since February, he's been like a top 7 rookie in the NBA. That's not even cap. He's really been that good.
Yeah.
So I
He's
am very
going on a
impressed.
run.
Yeah, and I mean,
Second
look,
team
like,
All NBA. I have second team All NBA. Second team All Rookie. Here we come.
yeah. I think like the draft night was such a sour note for me because, you know, my initial thought was just, oh my God, what the fuck? And I'm so glad they corrected it right away. Because I was just like, no, I am not gonna let that reaction. And I think the reaction was exacerbated by the fact that I was doing it with my boy Basketball Zone, and he was just like, oh my God, what are the Raptors doing? And then I just like, in order to process myself, I went and put my head down, and then he started talking. So it almost felt, and then he's just like, what have you done to my boy Rob? And it was just like, I was just trying to process. I wasn't like angry at the Gradey. It just caught me by surprise. I didn't think that they would pick him. I didn't
I
think
didn't
he'd be
think he'd fall.
available. I
Yeah,
didn't
I
think
didn't
he'd
think
be
he'd fall.
available. I never even
Yeah,
thought about it. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, Jordan Hawkins is right there. What do the Raptors know that I don't know? And yeah, I think I've overcompensated a little bit by like, you know, going at people for, you know, being against them. But truly, I saw so much in summer league and so much in the games that I watched after the draft in him, and I was just like, oh my God,
yeah.
this, if this works out, holy
And
shit.
he's not just a 3-point shooter. He
No,
shoots
he's not.
middies. He finishes at the rim. He's 6'8". He can dunk. He's athletic as all get out. I mean, it's not
Can
like
you
we're.
think of a 6'8" guy who can't dunk?
I know a guy, but not a professional athlete.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyways, man, take care. Have a good one.
Yes, sir. You
Peace, man.
too. Great night.
See ya. See ya. All right. Um, yeah. So an interesting chat about random things pertaining to the Toronto Raptors, Grady Dick, the future, etc. I too am looking forward to, you know, the New Orleans Pelicans game tonight now, right? Because it's 2 a.m. So I'll see you after that game. If you haven't hit subscribe, definitely. And I'll catch you guys then. I for one am not like thrilled about the Raptors moves today. I just got to be honest about that. I'm not like super thrilled about it. Scotty getting off season, you know, getting the surgery, good for him. I hope it heals. Hope everything's good. The summer is a very important summer for him. It might be the most important summer of his life. Team USA potentially obligations there. You know, he want to be healthy for that because it'd be a really great thing for him. I think he should work with Kevin Durant. I really do. There are some players who've worked with Kevin Durant over the last couple of summers, and they are showing positive growth. So I would love to see him work with KD. And yeah, I think it's a really big summer for him. I think it's a big summer for all these guys. And, you know, again, I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you, I am just looking forward to next year because there's a lot of positive things coming down next year, right? So I don't know. I have these really, really big plans for this channel. I have really huge plans for Pendants. And I have a feeling this team is going to be really, really good too. So I'm just like, it's kind of weird that you like a team so much, you follow a team so much, that they start to sort of impact your day to day, like how you feel about life in general. But I think most Raptor fans can say that at least 2% to 3% of your day, some people it's like 50%, but like 2 to 3% of your day is made a little bit better when the Raptors are doing well. And I, for one, would really like to see that, you know, next jump, you know, for this team. And I think it's going to be really cool because it's going to coincide with a jump for this channel. I think it's going to be really cool because I think it's going to coincide with a jump for Pandan. So I'm just looking forward to like just working my tail off. And I want to share one last thing with you guys. So I was listening to a YouTube channel. I don't know if you want to give that YouTube channel a shout out because I cannot remember the name of that channel right now, but it's something about like man talk something. And he was talking about like how you lose your life, you know, like how you lose yourself, lose your motivation, lose your standards, lose, you know, this and that and whatever. And so it's like all about numbing and distractions and all that stuff. And I don't know, a lot of it's kind of clicked in, you know, like go get it, man. Like you want this channel to blow up, you need to work for it. You know, you want this, go get it. You want to make films, go do it. You want Pendants to be like one of the best film festivals in the world, you got to work for that. So yeah, like I don't know. I was very like go get it through most of my early 20s, but then something happened when I turned 31, 32. I started to like just sort of wait for things to happen and be like, oh well, it'll happen. And I'm just, at 36 now, it's 4 years removed from the, 3 years removed, 4 years removed from the pandemic, and just trying to recover from it. I'm starting to get a little bit more of that go get it. You know what I mean? Like I'm writing emails to people that I don't know, just waiting for things to come back, but I'm not waiting too long, firing off more emails. Yeah. So I don't know. I think good things are about to happen for this channel. I think good things are about to happen for Pendants, and I think good things are about to happen for the Raptors. And I can't wait to see all of them align with September, October, November, December next year. It'd be really cool. All right. Take care. See you guys. Bye.